I'm here again with Nico, and today we wanted to talk about the process of leaving Canada for Paraguay. So first of all, I wanted to start out asking you about what it was like living in Canada during the past crisis. If you can just share like a few key takeaways that you experienced.
Yeah. So, the crisis of 2020 it was different for everybody, right? But I think that for us, when it happened, everybody was, looking at the media and everything that they were saying, and there was the lockdown. It wasn't that difficult for me personally, but there was a lockdown. I remember, I don't know how many months it was, but you had a curfew. Mm-hmm. I think it was 8 or 9 p.m. if I'm not mistaken. You had to be indoors at your house. I think at the beginning you had to be in your house. You couldn't be with people. And then there was same curfew, but you could be a total of 2 different families in a house, or either 2 couples or whatever, which was it was different. It was very weird to navigate those times. A lot of restrictions, obviously. People needed to get, we called it the passport to go into restaurants. So you needed to be vaccinated. And with that vaccine, you had a passport, which you could go into restaurants and everything. So there was a lot of restrictions. It lasted for a long time. I know some people were okay with it. Obviously, some people were not. There was a lot of controversy around that in our area in Quebec. But yeah, it was different. It was weird to navigate those times, and I'm happy now that we get to be able to leave our home and to go see our friends.
I think that 2019 was the peak of Canadian civilization. I really believe that. And I think the same can also be said about Europe, Australia, the US. I think 2019 was the ultimate peak. And you know how it is, when you reach a very high standard of something, it's very difficult to go even higher, but it's easier to downgrade, but it's just very hard to move on to the next step. So I think 2019 was a definite peak. Now let's talk a little bit more about coming to Paraguay and what that's like. We talked before, maybe we can share the process, the costs, and just, of course, also the headaches that are involved, right? It's not a flawless process by any means. So if you can explain a little bit about how you went through it and some of the things that you had to go through before you came here.
Yeah, no, the process is, as I said a little earlier, it is tedious, but with your help, it helped a lot, obviously, because there's a lot of things to think about. Just for the trip, there's not that much to think about. There's not there's no visa requirements from Canada. There's no vaccine requirements that you're obligated to get. Obviously, I think there's one that's the yellow fever, that it's not required, but it's recommended to get. So if you want to get it, that's a thing that you need to think about before you leave. In terms of cost, for us to the flights, it was around 2,500. So 2,500 Canadians for the flight. So not unexpensive. It is a certain amount of money that you have to spend for that flight. And just throughout the whole process, obviously you have to get all your documents authenticated in Canada by the government, your criminal background check and your birth certificate.
And that has now been delayed pretty much, right? Because I saw, we've been working with you and other Canadians too, that the waiting times for the apostille changed dramatically. It used to be just maybe like a few weeks. Mm-hmm. And in some, you don't have states in Canada, right? You have provinces, right? Yeah. So in some provinces, we're talking about like 2 to 3 months waiting time just to get the apostille, mm-hmm. which is again another indicator that they don't want you to leave. Yeah. It's like what we've talked about in the first video we shot today with the exit tax. Why is that being put in place? And now you see the same thing going on with the apostille. There are many indicators that the Trudeau government does not want you to depart. For sure not before he leaves the office, right? Okay, so the flight you said was about $2,500, right? Give or take. And you're also thinking about bringing your dog and 2 cats down to Paraguay. And I know that from my own personal experience that traveling with a pet is never easy. And you have to deal with health certificates, international health certificates. You have to get it accredited by your government, I think. And then, of course, also just, the stress it puts on an animal. So moving abroad is never easy, right? Mm-hmm. But I think it's worth it, mm-hmm. Because what's the alternative? Yeah. Staying. And are you going to be happy living in Canada? Maybe not. Mm-hmm. So I think in your case, you're looking to escape because of taxes, weather, and also lifestyle reasons. Mm-hmm. And you obviously want to be living in a place that's a little bit more free. Mm-hmm. So talk to us a little bit about the costs involved with getting residency here in Paraguay. How much did you pay and what was the process like? If you can maybe explain a little bit about coming here and then just how that went.
Yeah. So the cost, so there's the flights, obviously, 2,500. And then for the apostille, the authentication of the documents, it was approximately $100 maybe. total. And to get back to what you were saying in terms of time, you have to think about that before, right? Because it did take some time. We had to change our flights to Paraguay because the documents were not here in time. And in terms of cost for the whole residency, I think it was around, if I remember correctly, it was around 5,500, if I'm not mistaken. So, I mean, grand scheme of things, grand total, just for the process of coming here and doing the residency. Obviously, there's another trip involved in 3 to 4 months to finalize everything. So it's going to be another approximately $2,000 in flights. And obviously, all the expenses here. It's cheap, but it's still an expense that you have to think about. So depending on which restaurant you go to and everything. So total, I would say it's going to probably cost, just for the process of getting the residency, it's going to be around $10,000.
Another thing that you've pointed out about the yellow fever vaccine, that it's recommended to get it.
Yeah.
Now, when you fly directly from Canada into Paraguay, well, technically there is no direct flight, right? There are no direct flights. You have a layover in Panama. You know, this is a very small airport here, right?
Yeah.
But hopefully that will change because the FIFA World Cup is coming to Paraguay in the next years, and hopefully the government will do something to make this airport here bigger, right? We had one client that came from Australia to Paraguay. Well, he had a layover and then decided to stay a night in Brazil, and he was not allowed to fly from Brazil to Paraguay. So he didn't know that, and we were also not informed about him staying in Brazil for a night. If we had known that before, we would have recommended him to get the yellow fever vaccine. So he had changed his plans, and unfortunately, you know what he had to do? He had to fly back to Panama, and then from Panama he flew to Paraguay because he was allowed to fly from Brazil to Panama without the yellow fever vaccine, but surprisingly not from Brazil to Paraguay. So very strange, right? And so he just spent a little bit more time on the road, I guess. But okay, great. So you applied for residency now. You used our service. I hope you're happy with it, and I look forward to seeing you again when you come down in a few months' time. Are there any tips that you can pass on to our audience about just being here in Paraguay? Maybe some things to consider. You are now here in October, which is a very pleasant time. It's not too cold. It's not too hot. It's just perfect, right? I mean, in my opinion, it is. I don't know how you feel about it. I really enjoy the weather now because I know that when you come to Paraguay during your winter, like Canadian winter, it's brutally hot here, sweltering. So what's your recommendation for people looking to come here, just in terms of things to do, lifestyle? You know, we did go out to some places. We had a tour.
Absolutely. In terms of, obviously, try to learn Spanish as much as you can before coming here. Because yes, Nomad Elite is there for you and everything, but obviously for a couple of days during your trip, you're going to want, and you're going to be on your own, and you're going to want to do your things, going to restaurants, going to buy stuff, going to the shopping malls, and not a lot of people here speak English. So you want to make sure you know the basics. Either have at least a translating app on your phone, which is easily accessible and you can easily use. But I would say at least know the basics. If not, it's going to be very hard because not a lot of people speak English. We did the tour, which was really nice. We got to learn a lot about the history and the culture of Asuncion in particular. And the food here, from what we've had, is amazing. Great. I don't know if you want me to give some recommendations of restaurants.
Yeah, when we went out for lunch, I think it was when you talked to me about just the cost of dining out here being a fraction of what it is in Canada. And you're obviously from, I would say, a fancier city in Canada where you can experience the fine dining, right? However, it's not for free. You know, it comes with a very expensive price tag, whereas here in Paraguay, you can eat out for little money and have relatively high quality food.
Yeah, so just as a comparison, I mean, in Montreal for the food and for the nightlife is amazing. You have a lot of different cultures in Montreal, a lot of different restaurants, very, very fine dining, and you have more affordable restaurants. But if we go to a nice restaurant in Montreal for two, and let's say you take, drinks, appetizers, main course, dessert, a bottle of wine, for two with the tip, a nice restaurant can cost around $400. It can be more than that, could be a little lower, but usually average when we go out, we're averaging $300. So that's the cost of eating at a nice restaurant in Montreal. And I say nice restaurants. There are other restaurants that you could go, it's going to be $100, but nice restaurants in Montreal, nice ambiance, great food, amazing food, good wine, etc. $300 to $400. Here, we actually went to Casaluma yesterday, which is very nice. I don't know if you've ever been. It's in a house, so it's in a residential area. It's in one of the nicest residential areas. I think it's in Las Lomas, if I'm not mistaken. And it's basically, you arrive and you don't see any restaurants. There's just a door, entry door to a house, and then you walk in and it's a restaurant. There's still the pool in the backyard, which is kind of their terrace. A very, very nice restaurant. The service is amazing. The food was amazing, great quality and great ambiance as well. And I think it cost us around $200. So, half of the price. And a restaurant like that in Montreal would definitely cost $400 minimum. So yeah, the quality of the food and the dining here, we've been to a lot of other restaurants. The food obviously in grocery stores is a lot less expensive. Like just beer here is a lot less expensive than Canada. And yeah, so a lot of amazing food. If you come here, there's a lot of amazing restaurants that you can go to eat amazing food for half the price of you're probably used to in your country.
So you are gonna fly back to Canada soon, and you're gonna have to return in a few months' time to continue the process, right? And you're aware of the tax benefits that come with Paraguayan residency. I think that's been one of the biggest selling points to you personally, where you said, hey, this sounds pretty good to me, I no longer have to pay, I don't know how much you paid in taxes back in Canada, but here it's in the single digits, and you can optimize it to pay even less. There are a lot of deductions here that people don't usually talk about, but you can deduct a lot here. And the government's not going to put their nose into everything, which is also good, so they're not going to be anal about stuff. Yeah. Whereas I think Canada would probably be a little bit more problematic. Yeah. I remember working with also a French Canadian in 2013, 2014, he took certain deductions back then. I know that they were rather large deductions, and it got contested by the government. Yeah. And at the end of the day, he had to pay taxes on those deductions. They didn't allow him to deduct certain things, So in Paraguay, that's going to be more lenient, you know what I mean? So great. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. And I wish you the best of success with your residency in Paraguay and your new life.
Thank you.
If you're interested in relocating to Paraguay, please contact us. You can book a consultation with me personally. You should see the link displayed on the screen. We've also added it below in the description of the video. Thank you so much again for your time, Nico. I really appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing you on the next video, and of course also in Paraguay.